Good afternoon and welcome everybody to today's webinar presentation from Osirium and ITogether. The presentation is going to focus on preparing for NIS2 and the compliance success for organisations that need to work towards that particular compliance drive which is coming in the next couple of years. You'll be hearing from myself, Graham Hawkey. I'm one of the Osirium Senior Regional Sales Managers, been working at the organisation for around 6 years and specialise in privileged access management. And I'll hand over to Simon as well, our partner, who will tell you a little bit about himself, and then he'll set the scene and take you through a bit about NIS2 and the compliance drivers which are coming for us in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Simon Richardson. I founded ITogether in 2005. I've worked in the information security and networking area for 30 years. ITogether have customers all over the world in sectors such as energy, e-commerce, government, and also manufacturing. The NIS2 directive is the European Union-wide legislation for cybersecurity. It provides legal measures to boost the overall level of cybersecurity in the European Union. The European Union cybersecurity legislation introduced in 2016 were updated by the NIS2 directive that came into force in 2023. European member states have until the 17th of October 2024 to adopt and publish the provisions necessary to comply with NIS2. What is NIS2? NIS2, the Network and Information Systems Directive 2, is an updated version of the original NIS directive, which was first introduced in 2016 by the European Union. The purpose of NIS2 is to improve the security and resilience of critical infrastructures such as energy, transport, banking, healthcare, water supply, digital infrastructure across the European Union. Sectors deemed critical include space, public administrations, with some exceptions, data center providers, trust service providers, content delivery networks, and public electronic communications networks and services. Other critical sectors, such as postal services, chemicals, manufacturing, and key products, will also have to comply with the regulations, and these are known as important entities, but will be subject to less regulatory oversight than the entities that are classified as essential. Under the NIS directive, member states were responsible for determining which entities would meet the criteria to qualify as operators of essential services. The new NIS2 directive introduces a size cap rule. This means that all medium-sized and large entities operating within the sectors or providing services covered by the directive will fall within its scope. In some of the affected sectors, such as public electronic communications, the directive will apply regardless of size, while member states will also have the power to designate some organisations as essential or important entities, even if they fall under that size cap rule. The directive requires operators of essential services and digital service providers to take measures to ensure the security of their network and information systems, including risk management, incident handling, and reporting of significant incidents to national authorities. NIS2 also requires national authorities to cooperate with each other to ensure the protection of the critical infrastructure to take necessary measures in case of a significant cyber incident. Overall, NIS2 aims to promote a much more coordinated and harmonised approach to cybersecurity across the European Union and improve the resilience of critical infrastructures to cyber threats and cyber attacks. What is the impact of NIS2? The impacts of NIS2 are significant. NIS2 expands the scope of critical sectors to include additional industries for the first time. This means that a more significant number of companies, not just by size, will be subject to the regulations and will have to comply with these requirements. NIS2 introduces new obligations for the critical infrastructure operators, such as the requirement to perform regular security assessments, adopt incident response plans, and appoint a CISO. The operators will also need to report significant incidents to the national authorities. NIS2 also increases the maximum penalties for non-compliance up to 10 million euros, or 2% of the company's global turnover in Europe, which is higher than 17 million in the UK pounds. NIS2 promotes increased cooperation and information sharing among the national authorities and between the national authorities and the operators of essential services. This will help to improve the overall cybersecurity posture of the European Union. NIS2 encourages the development of European cybersecurity standards and certification schemes. This will help to harmonise the cybersecurity practices across the EU and improve the quality of cybersecurity products and services in turn. NIS-regulated organisations face several challenges in managing privileged access. NIS-regulated companies are vulnerable to insider threats, for employees, contractors, or other privileged users who have authorized access to sensitive information. These insider threats can include malicious actions, such as stealing data, sabotaging systems, or leaking confidential information. Many NIS-regulated companies rely on third-party vendors, suppliers, or partners who require privileged access to critical systems or data. Managing third-party access can be challenging because it requires providing access to external parties while ensuring security and compliance. NIS-regulated companies are subject to strict regulations such as GDPR and industry-specific regulations, and these regulations require companies to manage and monitor privileged access to sensitive resources and to report any authorized access or incidents in a very timely manner. The risk associated with poor privileged access management can be severe. Unauthorized privileged access can lead to data breaches, which can result in the theft of exposure of significant data, such as personal or financial information. This can cause significant reputational damage to the company, leading to loss of trust and customers. Poor privileged access management can result in regulatory fines and penalties for non-compliance with data protection and cybersecurity regulations. These fines can be substantial, as we've already said, depending on the severity of the breach and the size of the company. By implementing an effective PAM solution, organizations can ensure the security and compliance of their critical systems and data, reducing the risk of data breaches, regulatory fines, and of course, reputational damage.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Simon. Very insightful about that particular subject matter. Now we're going to continue a bit on from a Osirium angle, really, to tell you a bit about how privileged access management ties into all this. And Osirium, we are the UK-based privileged access management vendor. We specialise in separating IT administrators generally from the passwords and credentials they need to access the core critical infrastructure and IT infrastructure which resides within your estate. So things like network switches, firewalls, servers, that type of thing, web interfaces where people need to get access to these to do their job, to make configuration changes, maybe databases where they can access those as well. Well, putting them in all of it within the control of PAM, so we're controlling access for those users to access their particular resources, whether they're internal, external, or remotely accessing your organizational infrastructure. That's how PAM really sits. There's another part to this as well, why both PAM and endpoint privilege ties into this as well, is around sort of one of the things which is very prominent in the market at the moment and also ties into NIS and NIS2 is the fact of things like ransomware attacks going after not just your user accounts, but also going after things like your backups, protecting those backup systems and protecting all of the end users against anyone leaking or breaching that data on outside of your organization. So it's very important to protect against not just the privileged accounts, but also the people that are requiring privilege to carry out certain functions in the environment. So if we take the endpoint, for instance, people will usually use things like we call administration rights to be able to do administration functions on their particular endpoints or applications. So one of the main important things is to remove those from the environment, but allow people to use a product like ours to be productive, but also to be secure because we're working towards a compliance driver. And then with the PAM, that takes that on because we're protecting further from that with things like multi-factor authentication on those particular accounts, which give people access to critical infrastructure, and then rotating credentials in the middle so that people don't know what they are and they're as long and complex as the end systems can handle. This allows us to inject passwords and credentials, allows us to record the sessions of the users, so you've got a full audit trail of who's had access to what systems, when, where, and how. And that all ties into the compliance around NIS and also other compliance drivers and things that we see in the market today, which kind of ties in, for me, into a cyber insurance as well. The other thing is the disadvantage of not having PAM, where if you don't have a privileged access management solution, you're not going to be able to protect those privileged accounts. You're not going to be able to protect the administrators from accessing those with passwords and keys that they commonly know, which they can then share. And then you've got no audit trail of what's happened if there was an incident. And don't forget, if you're not working to the compliance drivers, there are some very big fines and things that will be cited in the news and things which will come in the next couple of years. Just on to the next one. So the key takeaways from today really are that the new NIS2 is going to impact more sectors and more organisations that's coming down the line. So people need to prepare for that. There's going to be some more obligations from organisations to make sure they're protecting. There's going to be a lot more security assessments taking place on a more regular basis. They'll be asking more stringent and deep questions around the security and protection of the organisation. As we've talked through, bigger fines are coming. So that means 2% of turnover or £10 million. So it's quite a staggering number if you're turning over a lot of money, obviously. And as we've just mentioned, key to all of this and to keeping up with the compliance driver is to make sure that you're managing and protecting those privileged accounts from access from the wrong people that don't need to be accessing. We're going to ask some questions now, so please feel free to pop some questions in the chat, which we'll pick up as we go. We've got some questions on the screen already, which we put together for this session. So I'm going to ask these to Simon, and please ask any that, like I said, if you've got any, put them in the chat. So yeah, really, Simon, which sectors are going to be really kind of impacted by this to need to prepare for this?
The same as the first NIS, but in addition to that, transport, banking, digital infrastructure, services like waste management and postal services, and courier type services. Okay,
so widen the scope quite considerably from the original document.
Yes.
Okay. What will be the UK's own NIS update? Because we know this is European legislation, and obviously we're not part of Europe anymore. So what's that going to look like from your perspective?
The difference between essentially EU NIS2 won't apply directly to the UK. However, the UK government announced on the 30th of November 2022 that the UK's NIS regulations will be strengthened to further protect essential services against digital threats such as attacks, and therefore bring into line with Europe.
Excellent, thank you. And why should my organisation really need to comply with NIS2?
Well, it's legal, it's the fines, the loss of credibility, brand reputation, and the fact that your sector is probably not already covered by NIS and is now. So it's a new thing that you have to deal with.
Okay, so yeah, anyone that's been used to it previously, it's a continuation and more secure stance of that. But anyone that's not been, it's going to be something completely new that's going to be coming down the road for them as well.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Is there any questions in the chat at all? Is there anything that's been asked? Okay. You got anything there that you'd like me to ask Simon? Excellent, thank you. Okay, so they've got a good question here actually. So what are the changes that are going to be happening? Could you talk a bit more about those for us at all?
The changes in terms of how it affects the United Kingdom, or the changes in
things like encouraging of more data sharing between authorities, that type of thing, because obviously people are becoming more digitalised now, and this is part of the core critical infrastructure of the UK, of our country. So it's just understanding how that's going to sort of
it's
that digitalisation as well.
The major thing is that it's much more of a coordinated thing. Previously for NIS, or NIS version 1, if you want to call it that, it was specific industries that were expected to comply. There wasn't the sharing of information across those industries, and there certainly wasn't the sharing of that information across the European Union boundary. That's the major things that have changed. In addition to that, the bar has been lowered in terms of those organisations, not necessarily by size, but by vertical, that have to comply with NIS or face the alternative, which of course is the fines.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions at all? We've got some coming through here, so I'll just, I haven't got any glasses on, so sorry, I have to lean over here and read the screen. Okay, so is NIS2 it's going to include any other vehicles that are not covered, like agricultural construction machines, as well as things like motorcycles and that type of thing? Is that going to be covered, or?
Great question. Not as far as I'm aware, no. The NIS regulations essentially apply to sectors and parts of the economy that would stop the economy from continuing, if that makes sense. So power is a good example, waste is a good example, banking is a really good example. Postal services and couriers, again, they stop the economy from working. Would farming? I don't think it would now.
Okay, good question though. We've got some others here as well. Sorry, I'm leaning over. How long can we expect for the UK government to implement the actual NIS2 directives?
How long will it take to implement?
Yeah, I mean, how long? So once it sort of comes,
the actual deadline for the European Union is 17th of October 2024. So
okay.
If you read into that along the line, you should be aiming for compliance towards the latter part of this year into early next year.
Okay, so quite recently. Yeah, so once that comes in Europe, you kind of would expect people to be working towards that already and be in compliance.
Yes. For those already adhering to NIS version 1, none of this will be particularly new. They'll just continue to do what they're doing in addition to updating, getting ready for NIS 2. For those that are where it's a new thing, they have over a year.
Okay, so they've got a bit more time, but they've got a bit more on their plate, I suppose, because it's a new thing. So if they need any help from us, they can always come and talk to us, and we can advise and help in those areas. Okay, I think that's it for the questions for today. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, everybody. If you want any assistance from us or would like a conversation on either the actual compliance drive in NIS2 or more in the sort of subject matter around privileged access management, then please reach out to us and we can book in a demonstration and show you how we can help. Thank you very much for your time.